This video is brought to you by ncix.com. Great technology, selection, and service. Hello everyone, this is Dimitri with Canucks, and I'm very supportive of companies branching out into new territories with addition of new product categories, as it paves the way for perfect competition and a chance to absorb the already tried and tested designs and make them better. Today we're talking about Be Quiet, the company that stands behind silencing the operation of your PC components, and they have a solid history with silent and good performing CPU coolers, power supplies, and a wide selection of fans. We also recently visited their HQ in Hamburg, so make sure to check that out. Now, the Silence Base 800 is their very first chassis, and it has plenty of shoes to fill given the direction of all of Be Quiet's products, and especially priced at a higher tier mark of $140. Now let's start with the exterior form. The Silent Base 800 doesn't try to be something outrageous, and design wise it's actually pretty basic. Simple plastic exterior shell with Be Quiet logo in the front. These squared removable pieces on each side panel add some character, and the brushed grain for the entire front facade is appreciated. That isn't as difficult to clean as aluminum. However, the plastic is not rubberized and is prone to scratches easily. I've already accumulated plenty of visible marks around the top of the panel. The Silent Base 800 is released in three colors: the standard black, silver, and orange, with accents spread on the side ventilation, the case feet, and internal rubber pieces to match the exterior splash of color. I love the full stealth black, but I wish the color accents were somehow removable so you can paint them yourself, or purchase the color accents panels individually, separately, and later on put them on the case. The three optical bays are hidden behind the magnetic cover that doesn't open too wide, but can be swapped to be opened from the other side depending on how you orient the case. Sound dampening foam is pre-applied to keep the noise down, and that carries over to the bottom panel as well. Removing the dust filter reveals dual 140mm intake fans. Now these are their Pure Wings 2 that spin at 1000 RPM and are dead silent. Also installed with rubber grommets to avoid any vibration noise while delivering enough airflow through the side vents, although looking at the openings it does seem to be limited, but ambient case temperatures remain below 30 degrees Celsius, and that's impressive. The I/O ports are at the top with 4 USB ports, 2 of which are USB 3. Audio jacks, there is no reset button, instead just a large power button with an illuminated perimeter. The top exhaust is limited. This is on purpose to avoid operational noise. Plus, notice how tall the top cover is. This is to channel all exhaust through the back away from the user. Here we get dual 120 and 140mm fan mounts. The smaller fan strips allow flexible mounting of an all-in-one water cooler away from the motherboard for easier cable management, and with our dual 140mm fans installed, you can see how limited exhaust is, especially for that first fan. Coming around to the back, we see 7 PCI slots, a 120mm Pure Wings 2 fan, and the removable dust filter with that large hook for easier extraction, and that spans the power supply area and an optional fan slot as well. The bottom of the Silent Base 800 is very similar to the top, as it's completely enclosed with vents only at the rear, again emphasizing the importance of channeling away the noise from the user. The basement is also tall enough for the power supply to breathe, and this lends itself very well for carpeted surfaces where the bottom intake will not suffocate. Be Quiet's approach with the case feet is also something new. They are removable and simply pop in place and have rubber pads for stability on hard surfaces, but if you want to place it down for assembly, for example, removing the case feet helps to level off the chassis. Now, one thing to keep in mind is they are plastic and slightly flexible, but it shouldn't cause any concern over durability. Their approach with the side panels is also interesting. The middle cover is an optional fan slot with a dust filter included, but notice it's on both sides to keep the symmetrical design, and internally are fully covered in more noise dampening foam. You can utilize this slot and space out the middle cover for better airflow, or close it completely if not utilized. Now, this will introduce more noise if you decide to install a fan there, but at least it is covered to limit the sound. Moving inside, the internal structure is very familiar. This is a tried and tested layout that basically works. Modular drive cages with open frame design to allow the least resistive intake, removable with thumb screws, and swappable so you can install the smaller one at the bottom. Even with the drive cage fully removed, there isn't room for a 240mm radiator at the front because the drive base is riveted instead of being removable, and the mounting holes are really close to the floor that would not allow a radiator to fit. And this is an oversight. You can only install 120 or 140mm radiator at the front. There is a dedicated fan spot at the bottom for extra airflow. Just keep in mind power supply size limitations of up to 170mm for the fan to have clearance. GPUs up to 29cm are supported until we hit the drive cage, but I would like to see over 30cm of clearance, perhaps with their future revisions, with the cage, just to eliminate any compromise that you might encounter of storage and hardware. The 3.5-inch drives are mounted using these two rubber strips and thumb screws, and this setup ensures no audible vibrations are heard during operation. You simply insert the drive onto the rails and lower the support bar that will prevent them from falling out. Now this system is great, but there is no dedicated support for 2.5-inch drives aside from the single spot per cage at the top, with really inconvenient mounting. Now to some extent they do compensate with the two SSD brackets behind the motherboard tray that are easy to install, but integrated 2.5-inch mount for the main drive cage should be considered for their next case. There's plenty of room behind the motherboard tray with a large sleeve at the bottom for tucking away any smaller cables. And moving on to the assembly, the middle motherboard standoff is tall to catch the motherboard for easier installation, and here's the build, looking absolutely gorgeous and clean. I am using a micro ATX board, so the lack of any cutouts directly underneath the smaller board means extra cable clutter inside, but as you can see, we've managed quite well. And they also got a 280mm all-in-one water cooler installed thanks to the extra room above the frame, plus each fan has appropriate cutouts for cable routing behind the motherboard, and this is an awesome little consideration. Now, the one major hiccup I stumble upon during cable management is the lack of cable tie points where you need them. There are only 3 running along the rubber grommets, but nothing beside the SSD brackets that makes securing the 24-pin cable basically impossible, resulting in uncontrollable and messy cable work, as you can see. So the trick is to spread your cables to avoid concentration. Now sure, if you had both SSD brackets occupied, that would limit spacing in that area, but how about at least a few cable tie points above and below the SSDs to make sure that no cable is left unattended. Now the question is, how quiet is the Silent Bass 800? And while we don't have a sound meter, I thought I'd share these clips with you with the system completely off and running. And now let's turn it on. So yes, the chassis is indeed extremely quiet, even under load with fans ramping up. Now the loudest component in there is the pump on the CPU cooler, but combine this with quiet components and you'll have a totally silent machine while maintaining really good temperatures, in our case at 30 degrees Celsius at idle for the CPU. And at the end of the day, the Silent Bass 800 delivers to what was promised with silent operation, good looks, and functional exterior shell to channel noise away from the user, with adjustable side ports for airflow, removable case feet for user preference, modular cage system, and proper dust filtration while managing a clean build for the main chamber. Seriously, the only drawback would be the lack of cable tie points where they matter behind the motherboard tray. That makes it almost impossible to clean things up, and there's also no convenient installation for the 2.5-inch drives on the main drive cage, and that makes replacing them more difficult. I do do think that the best thing about this release is it doesn't feel like Be Quiet's first case. This is an awesome attempt, and to the most part everything is handled well aside from the missing out on those cable management elements. At $140 you are looking at a well-built chassis with silent-oriented features, but strictly from a pricing perspective I do wish that it would be more competitive just to entice people to choose Be Quiet. And that concludes our review of the Silent Bass 800. We'd love to hear what you think about this release and what color you prefer, and I'm sure we can collectively provide a ton of feedback to Be Quiet on what you like and dislike about the case, so leave your comments down below. Consider subscribing for more similar content and leave us a like if you found this review helpful. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.